오미자차 한 잔 주세요.
한국랑 혼자 많으시고.
네, 맞아요. So, you enjoy Americano, Ambassador?
Oh yes, and to be honest, I was surprised to see that there are so many coffee shops in South Korea. I think every block or every 30 or 50 minutes to my impression.
Right, at least every other block there is one.
I see. Why South Koreans spend so much money on coffee every day?
I don't know. I think it's just recent. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of coffee shops and we spend a lot of time and money on coffee. Never really thought about why.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so shall we?
All right, yes.
So today we're here at a traditional Korean cafe. How do you like it?
Oh, I like it very much. I've never expected that there is this kind of, Korean style, the cafe, 5 or 6 years ago, some rich investor, decided to make one, Western style coffee shop in Pyongyang. And at that time, many people were really, suspicious of the success of that kind of coffee shop, because in Pyongyang, one cup of this kind of coffee, costs around $5 or $6, and in Pyongyang, you can actually, sustain, one day, with $5. With $5, you can actually buy one set of meal. Yeah? So many people do not believe in of the success of that coffee shop. But once this coffee shop was opened, it created a kind of, the miracle. As soon as it was opened, the coffee shop was full of young people, because these days, North Korean young people, they watch South Korean dramas. And in their minds, they wanted to copy the lifestyle of South Korean young people, So nowadays, when the young people meet, girls or boys, and when they have date, they always choose coffee shop and they want to imitate the lifestyle of South Korea. So coffee shop was one of great success. So after that, money masters, so to speak, don't you? They started to open coffee or tea shop. The people in business, learned that the change of, cultural contents can also create a new market. Yes.
Well, it's very interesting to me that you say market, because to the rest of us, watching North Korea from the outside world, market, the word market doesn't really go with North Korea's quote-unquote ideology. For instance, how much would you pay for that cup of tea that you are drinking?
I have to pay around $5 to $7.
Why are we talking in dollar terms?
Oh, because the exchange rate of U.S. dollar and North Korean won is really affluent. So usually people want to calculate the price in dollar terms rather than in North Korean terms.
So if a foreign reporter or foreign visitor visits Pyongyang and finds, I suppose, a cup of tea that he wants to buy for himself, would he pay in North Korean won or in US dollars?
There are foreign currency restaurants. You must pay the foreign currency, either US dollar or Japanese yen, or there are also some restaurants which can accept North Korean won.
So it definitely sounds like, North Korea has more or less adapted to this market economy even, perhaps a very initiative stages of a market economy there.
Oh, I would rather say that North Korean economic structure is a very the complicated, the structure. For instance, the main industry like the mining industry, the like electricity, the energy, or the biggest industry is defense industry, These are the socialist planned commanding, the economic structure. But on the meanwhile, the so-called, the market economy is growing. Many state-owned enterprises are dependent on the general market, where the capitalist, the economic theory applies. So the present North Korean economy is a kind of hybrid, the system of socialist ownership and the capitalist market-oriented economy. And in general, I think the current North Korean economy is a kind of, very primitive, the first stage of the capitalist free market economy.
Now let's talk about this illicit, they are illicit, black markets, 장마당.
장마당 is not illicit.
It's not?
Yes, because when you say illicit, that means that there is no any government, the acknowledgement of the 장마당, but a 장마당 is run, with the approval of government, so it's not illicit. It's official, the place where the people can trade.
Really? So the government or the state or the regime acknowledges this trade of goods?
Yes. In late of 1990s, when the food ration system collapsed, millions of people died of hunger, because they expected that the food would be rationed or supplied by the government, but the government cannot provide. So what the government at that time took, that they allowed a sort of free trade among the people, which created 장마당, and people just flocked to that controlled area to sell and buy each other, and the number of 장마당 increased, nationwide. And at a later stage, the authority learned that they should control it, because the number at that time was increasing dramatically. So every province, every city, even the Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, they set a certain places for 장마당.
Right.
And also they selected some people, they call it a trader or vendor, to be allowed to sell, their own, the commodities or products in 장마당. So 장마당 itself, it's a kind of, official and legal place where you can sell your own things. North Korean regime always, tries to control the people. So even though they allow this kind of, free trade, they usually assign a certain place, like 장마당, where the people can trade. But the area is not big enough for the people, to come and sell. So they just select some of the people. They give a kind of, right to a certain selected people. Then what would happen to the other people? For instance, if you grow vegetables in your house or make bean curd or whatever, you have to sell it. So they created a kind of illicit market, which we call market of grasshoppers, because when policemen are supposed to confiscate, all these illicit, the activities. So when they saw policemen, were approaching, then they have to run away with their
hop away like grasshoppers.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like grasshoppers. But these years, this market of grasshoppers turned into market of the ticks.
Ticks?
Tick.
Yeah.
It's a kind of animal. Once
It's a bug that
it's a bug. Once it stick to the skin, but the mentality of the people is changed, because if they don't sell their own, the products, then they can't, sustain their own families' living. So whatever the government or whatever the authorities tell them, they still want to continue their own way. So that's why we say the market of grasshoppers now turned into market of ticks. Yes.
Based on the concept of a socialist state, so equal wealth for everyone, and basically the key of that is like the ration system. And to my impression, what you're saying is that the ration system has collapsed.
Yes.
And now the North Korean state even condones or even encourages the trade of goods, correct?
Yes.
Then how does the North Korean state legitimize its being?
Oh, of course, there is no any official the explanation or the legitimacy of the existence of 장마당. So far, official North Korean policy line does not accept the existence of 장마당. If you read the speeches, recent speeches of Kim Jong-un or the official report by Workers' Party of Korea, you never find even a single word about a 장마당 or whatever. But what is really happening is that the interdependency between the 장마당 and also this illicit, economic activity and the official, the government, the people are increasing. So how it happens, for instance, millions of people are dependent on the government institutions and state-owned the factories. The civil servants in government institutions cannot, afford their living with their salaries. 1 month of salary even cannot afford them to buy 1 kilo of the rice. So how they can go on with their living? They use this kind of, their own privileges of the jobs to get bribe. Yes, so
kickbacks.
That's right. So the government and the officials in the party system, they have the right to sell, the right of the trade to individuals. And by giving those privileges to a certain the selected people to sell their goods in 장마당, these people continuously to, flow in the money, to the people who have that kind of right. And the people in the enforcement, the sectors, they have a kind of, the right to enforce not to sell a certain kind of the product. For instance, they want to control the price of rice, to the certain level. And these days, the price of rice are soaring. Then how they do that? So they ask don't to sell the rice at that high price. If the traders continue to sell in high price, then they threaten them that their rice could be confiscated. And in order to continue to sell their own the rice, they have to bribe. They have to give some money to those enforcement, the officials. So this kind of interdependency makes the possible of the management and running of 장마당. So in North Korea we call it a food chain system economy. If you earn a certain profit through black market or the market-oriented economy, then you have to distribute your profit or income, to a certain, the people who are actually in the government and enforcement, the network. So this kind of redistribution of the income and profit, it's settling down in North Korean system. So this kind of interdependency cannot, eradicate the existence of 장마당.
What about other professions, such as perhaps medical doctors or school teachers or professors? How do they make a living?
A very interesting question. For instance, university professors, they are mostly educated one in North Korea and they should be highly paid. But actually, the university professors are really, really poorly paid circle. if you want to get a good job in North Korea, you should have a very good university grade. In North Korea, we have a 5-mark system in university. But if you have 3, the marks on any subject, then you just lose, the entitlement to enter any kind of government, the ministries or good organizations. So
it's like a grade, like A, B, C, D, F.
yeah, that's right, yes. I told university professors are poorly paid, but they have a very strong, a kind of leverage of marking, the results of their examinations. So if you're a student, then usually the professors, they give a very difficult problem to solve, So for instance, if you are a mathematics department, then professors give you a math problem which you cannot solve it. You understand? Mm-hmm. What would do the students? The students should buy the marks, buy, the grade with the money. And for instance, doctors, if you are a dentist, whatever, actually you are supposed to give the free treatment, to the patients. But if you do not give any money or at least, the 1 pack of cigarettes to the dentist, then the dentist would give you a very, rude, the treatment, So if you want to be treated very nicely, gently, and better treatment, at least you should give, mostly we give either, the cigarettes or some money or whatever. And if you visit any North Korean hospital, at the entrance of the hospital, there are always a long line of vendors, They sell cigarettes or just for the doctors. And when you go in, and you have to calculate yourself what kind of treatment you expect. If you just want a very simple, the treatment, then you may buy just 1 pack of cigarettes. But if you want to take like an X-ray or a little bit long, the consultation, then you have to buy at least, the 1 bundle of, the cigarettes, and you should take it in. And every doctor in North Korea has a special drawer, and we give it, and then the doctor take it and keep it at the drawer, and then give a very good treatment. And when they finish the job, they give all their, those the gifts or bribes back to those vendors who are outside of the hospital. So the same cigarettes or same lighters produce, the money every day. So it goes in and out, in and out,
wow.
in and out. So can you see this kind of, the network of food chain?
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the way how the present North Korea works.
So what about North Korean embassies abroad?
Very good question.
How are they run?
Oh, yes. The hard currency comes from the renting out of properties of North Korean embassies. During the Cold War period, North Korea made very large, embassy properties in Europe, in Moscow, in Berlin, in Warsaw, Bucharest, Sofia. In Europe, they have big embassies, Hundreds of diplomats work there. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union and Cold War system, there is no point for North Korea to maintain that kind of large, the network of diplomats in Europe. So most of the embassies in Europe, there are only 5 to 10 diplomats, So what would do with those big buildings? So they rented out these big buildings to those commercial companies. According to Vienna Convention, it is illegal for embassies to rent out their properties, but the European governments so far are silent on this, the commercial activity by North Korea. So North Korean Foreign Ministry can earn, large sum of hard currency from this, the property renting.
Well, so it looks like, in the capitalist world, they say once you open your eyes to the value of money, there's no turning back.
Yes.
And that's what, to me, seems like what's happening in the North Korean society. And therefore, you say that there is absolutely no long-term future for the North Korean regime as is.
The current North Korean system is not providing. The original system of providing collapsed. So what would do the people? The people should look for their own way to survive. No matter, you see, what job you have, whether you are in party or diplomat or army officer, whatever, you have to look for your own way of survival. And that creates a kind of, more and more market-oriented economy.
So, Ambassador, would you say that a China-like reform, market
Yes.
reform, or opening up to the market is also a possibility for North Korea?
I don't think so, because Chinese is open. They call it open socialist market system. So Chinese, the system is the combination of a state-owned economy and a private ownership, and China was possible, to adopt this market-oriented economy only when Deng Xiaoping, the former leader of China, denied the previous Chinese, economic policy by Chairman Mao. But in North Korea, the current leader Kim Jong-un cannot do it, because if he changed the policy, and if he tries to adopt a kind of policy which actually reflects the current, the economic status, then that could be interpreted as a kind of direct denial of the previous economic policy made by his father and grandfather.
So then what's ahead? What's next?
That is the good question, Kim Jong-un is in dilemma because, the current North Korean society is moving towards more and more market-oriented structure, while he tries very hard to stay on the original policy line. And from time to time, North Korean authority tries to control and intervene in 장마당 and market, orientation. But so far, it turned out to be a failure. And also, as I have said, the interdependency between market and the government, are also increasing. Actually, Kim Jong-un is in great dilemma, and he can't control it, but he seems blind, on the current development. That's why I think there is no future, for Kim Jong-un regime. The most important thing which I want to note, that the expansion of the general market and market-oriented concept in North Korea is also, creating a kind of, the concept of self-management, a sense of self-management among North Korean people. This concept of self-management, I'm absolutely sure, in the future, in the long run, will create a kind of self-management of not only their lives, but also the society.
And I think they're called the black market generation, North Korea's millennials.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you again for this very insightful session. I really enjoyed our dialogue today.
And thank you very much, EC, for putting up those good questions to me.
Thank you.